Marriage is like a detailing job. You're the only one who notices the dirt until it's too late. I'm Owen Carter, 36 years old, and I own Carter Mobile Detailing. Been running it for 8 years now, ever since I got tired of working for other people who didn't understand that perfection isn't optional, it's the baseline. My wife Maren handles the books and scheduling. At least, that's what she's supposed to be doing. The signs started 3 months ago, subtle as fingerprints on black paint. Maren began guarding her phone like it contained state secrets, flipping it face down whenever I walked into a room. She started taking errands that lasted hours, coming home with nothing to show for it except excuses that didn't add up. "Where were you?" I'd ask, keeping my voice casual while I cleaned my equipment in the garage. "Just running around, you know how it is," she'd say, already heading upstairs. Traffic was terrible. But I knew every route in this city. I knew which roads had construction, which intersections backed up during rush hour. Her explanations never matched the timeline. Then there were the late-night calls. Maren would step outside to take them, claiming it was her sister dealing with another relationship crisis. Funny thing about that, I ran into her sister at the grocery store 2 weeks ago, and she seemed pretty happy with her boyfriend of 5 years. "How's the relationship drama going?" I asked, just to test the waters. She looked confused. "What drama? Things are great." That's when I knew for certain something was wrong. The worst part wasn't the lying. It was watching Maren transform into someone I didn't recognize. The woman who used to laugh at my stupid jokes about soap suds and tire shine now barely looked up from her phone during dinner. She'd developed this habit of checking her appearance obsessively, buying new clothes she claimed were just for herself, and working late at the office 3 nights a week. Our office is a converted garage behind our house. There's no reason to work late there unless you're avoiding coming home. I'm not the jealous type, never have been. But I'm observant. It's an occupational hazard when your job requires noticing every speck of dust, every water spot, every imperfection that everyone else misses. And what I was noticing about my wife's behavior had all the subtlety of bird droppings on a fresh wax job. The breaking point came last Tuesday. I was detailing Mrs. Henderson's Lexus when I realized I'd forgotten my microfiber cloths. The good ones, not the cheap substitutes that leave lint. I drove back to the office to grab them and saw Maren's car in the parking area. Nothing unusual about that, except it was parked next to Tyler Brooks's beat-up Honda Civic. Tyler is my assistant, 28 years old, with the kind of easy charm that makes clients request him specifically. He's good at the work, reliable, and until that moment I'd trusted him completely. Trusted him with keys to client vehicles, access to the equipment, and apparently, access to my wife. I didn't storm in, that's not my style. Instead, I grabbed my cloths, noted the time, 2:47 p.m., and drove back to finish Mrs. Henderson's car. But my mind wasn't on the detailing anymore. It was calculating, processing, running through possibilities like a computer program designed to find flaws. That evening, Maren mentioned she'd spent the afternoon reorganizing the filing system. Tyler had stayed late to help, she said, just being thorough. "That's nice of him," I replied, not looking up from my dinner. "What time did you two finish up?" "Around 5:30. You know how those files can be." I knew exactly how long it took to organize our files because I'd done it myself 6 months ago. 30 minutes tops. But I didn't say that. Instead, I smiled and nodded, filing away another piece of evidence in the case I was building against my own marriage. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I drove to Best Buy and purchased a small, discreet dashboard camera, the kind that records continuously and saves to a memory card. The sales kid explained how it worked, how to hide the wiring, how to access the footage. "Insurance purposes?" he asked. "Something like that," I said. Installing it in Maren's car took 15 minutes. I did it while she was in the shower, working quickly and efficiently. The camera was virtually invisible, tucked behind her rearview mirror, the wire run along the edge of the windshield and down to the power outlet. For 3 days, I waited. 3 days of normal conversations about grocery lists and weekend plans. 3 days of pretending I didn't notice the way Maren's eyes lit up when Tyler's name came up in conversation. 3 days of acting like everything was fine while my world quietly fell apart. On Friday night, after Maren went to bed, I retrieved the memory card and plugged it into my laptop. The footage was crystal clear. I should have stopped watching after the first 30 seconds. Should have closed the laptop, poured myself a drink, and figured out how to handle this like a civilized adult. Instead, I sat in my garage at 11:30 at night, watching my wife of 8 years destroy our marriage in high definition. The timestamp showed Tuesday afternoon, 2:52 p.m. 5 minutes after I'd seen their cars parked together. Maren and Tyler were in the back seat of her Honda Accord, and there was no ambiguity about what they were doing. None whatsoever. What struck me wasn't just the betrayal, it was how comfortable they looked together. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a spontaneous mistake. This was routine, practiced. Tyler knew exactly how to adjust the seat. Maren knew exactly where to position herself. They moved like people who had done this many times before. I watched Tyler laugh at something Maren whispered, watched him run his hands through her hair the same way I used to, back when she still let me touch her. Watched my wife arch her back and make sounds I hadn't heard in months. The worst part came at the end, when they were getting dressed. Maren checked her appearance in the mirror, fixing her makeup with the same careful attention she used to reserve for date nights with me. Tyler was saying something about next week, about being more careful with timing. "Owen's getting suspicious," I heard Maren say, her voice slightly muffled by the car's interior. "Maybe we should cool it for a while," Tyler replied, buttoning his shirt. Maren laughed, actually laughed. "He's too focused on his precious cars to notice anything. Besides, what's he gonna do? He needs me to run the business." That's when I stopped the video. You don't get mad, you get meticulous. That's what my father used to say when I was a kid, usually right before he'd ground me for a month after catching me in some elaborate lie. He was a methodical man, my father. Believed in documentation, evidence, and consequences that fit the crime. I inherited that trait, apparently. I spent the next hour making copies of the video file, one on a flash drive, one uploaded to a secure cloud storage account, one burned to a DVD. Then I opened a new document on my computer and started typing. Evidence log. Case, Carter versus Carter. Date, Friday, October 13th. Time, 11:30. p.m., 12:30. a.m. Evidence, video recording from dashboard camera. Location, company parking area behind residence parties involved. Maren Carter, wife. Tyler Brooks, employee. Duration of recorded incident, 23 minutes, 14 seconds. Nature of incident, adultery, misuse of company time and property. I kept writing, documenting every detail with the same precision I used for detailing estimates. Times, dates, locations, the suspicious phone calls, the unexplained errands, the late nights at the office. Everything I'd noticed over the past 3 months, laid out in chronological order. By the time I finished, it was almost 2 a.m. Maren was still asleep upstairs, probably dreaming about her next rendezvous with Tyler. I sat back in my chair and considered my options. Option 1. Confront them both immediately. Scream, shout, throw things. Demand explanations and apologies that wouldn't change anything. Option 2. File for divorce, split everything 50-50, and spend the next year fighting over assets while Tyler consoled my wife through her difficult transition. Option 3. Get creative. I chose option 3. The next morning, I woke up early and drove to the office before anyone else arrived. I changed all the passwords on our scheduling software, our client database, and our payment processing system. I updated the access codes on our equipment storage and removed Tyler's name from our insurance policy as an authorized driver. Then I called our accountant. "Frank, it's Owen. I need to set up separate business accounts, effective immediately." Frank Kowalski had been handling our books for 3 years. He was thorough, discreet, and completely uninterested in personal drama. Perfect for what I had in mind. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Just reorganizing. I want the business finances completely separate from household accounts. Can you handle that?" "Sure thing. I'll need Maren to sign some forms since she's listed as..." "Actually, I'm removing her from the business accounts. She'll be transitioning to a different role." Frank paused. He was smart enough to read between the lines. "I'll draw up the paperwork." Next, I called our insurance agent and reported a potential liability issue involving employee misconduct. I didn't provide details, just enough to create a paper trail. Then I contacted our business lawyer and scheduled a meeting for Monday morning. By the time Maren woke up, I was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee and the newspaper, acting like nothing had changed. "You're up early?" she said, pouring herself a cup. "Couldn't sleep." "Thinking about business stuff." She nodded absently, already checking her phone. "Tyler's coming in early today to prep the Johnson account. Big job." "Actually, I'm handling the Johnson account myself. Tyler's got other assignments." Maren looked up from her phone. "Since when?" "Since I decided to take a more hands-on approach with our premium clients." I kept my voice casual, conversational. "Speaking of which, I'm changing some of our procedures, tightening up security, updating access codes. You know how it is." "What kind of security?" "Just standard stuff, making sure only authorized personnel have access to vehicles and equipment. Insurance company recommended it." I watched her process this information, saw the moment she realized what it might mean. Her phone buzzed. Probably Tyler, wondering why he couldn't log into the system. "I should get to the office," she said, suddenly urgent. "No rush. Everything's handled." But she was already heading upstairs to get dressed, moving with the kind of panicked efficiency that confirmed everything I suspected. Within 20 minutes, she was out the door, probably racing to warn Tyler that their comfortable little arrangement was about to get complicated. I gave her a 10-minute head start, then drove to the office myself. The show was about to begin. I arrived at the office to find Maren and Tyler huddled over her computer, speaking in the kind of urgent whispers that guilty people use when they think they're alone. They didn't notice me at first, too focused on trying to access systems that no longer recognized their credentials. "The password isn't working," Maren was saying, her voice tight with frustration. "Try the backup one," Tyler suggested. "I did. Owen must have changed everything." "Why would he do that?" That's when I cleared my throat. "Morning, you two. Having computer troubles?" They jumped apart like teenagers caught making out behind the school. Tyler's face went red, while Maren tried to compose herself into some semblance of professionalism. "The systems locked us out," Maren said, forcing a smile. "Some kind of glitch." "Not a glitch. An upgrade. New security protocols." I walked to my desk and sat down, enjoying the way they exchanged nervous glances. "Tyler, I need to see you in the conference room. Maren, Frank Kowalski will be calling about some paperwork changes." "What kind of changes?" Maren asked. "Business restructuring. Nothing that concerns you anymore." The conference room was really just a corner of the garage with a folding table and 3 chairs, but it served its purpose. I'd asked my sister Jen to sit in as a witness. She managed our accounts receivable and had a talent for making people uncomfortable with her direct stare. Tyler slouched into his chair, trying to project confidence he clearly didn't feel. "What's this about, Owen?" I opened my laptop and turned it toward him. "I think you know." The video started playing automatically. Tyler's face went from confusion to recognition to pure panic in about 3 seconds. He reached for the laptop, but I pulled it back. "I wouldn't," I said calmly. "Jen's already seen it. So has Frank, and my lawyer will be seeing it Monday morning." "Owen, I can explain." "Actually, you can't. What you can do is listen." I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. "You're fired, effective immediately. You'll turn in your keys, your uniforms, and any company equipment. You'll sign a resignation letter admitting to misconduct, and you'll agree never to contact any of our clients or employees again. You can't just, I can, and I am. The alternative is that this video gets shared with everyone we know, starting with your girlfriend. Tyler's face went white. I'd forgotten he was dating someone, a nice girl named Amy who worked at the bank. She probably had no idea her boyfriend was spending his afternoons in back seats with married women. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice. Take responsibility for your actions or face the consequences publicly. What's it going to be? Jen slid a prepared resignation letter across the table. Tyler stared at it for a long moment, then grabbed a pen and signed without reading it. Smart choice, I said. Now get out. After Tyler left, actually, after he ran out like his pants were on fire, I turned my attention to Maren. She was waiting in the main office, pacing like a caged animal. We need to talk, she said the moment I walked out of the conference room. Do we? Owen, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you've been screwing my employee in the backseat of your car? How you've been lying to my face for months? How you think I'm too stupid to notice? I kept my voice level, professional. Which part needs explaining exactly? Maren's composure cracked. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I have video evidence. You were spying on me? I was protecting my business interests. Turns out my instincts were right. She tried tears next, the kind of calculated crying that's designed to make men feel guilty and protective. It might have worked 6 months ago, before I knew what she was really capable of. I made a mistake, she sobbed. It didn't mean anything. 23 minutes and 14 seconds of nothing. That's pretty specific nothing. How long have you known? Long enough to document everything. Long enough to separate our business accounts. Long enough to consult a lawyer. I sat down at my desk and opened a folder. Long enough to prepare divorce papers. That stopped the crying immediately. Divorce? You're surprised? You've been cheating on me with my employee, lying about it for months, and using company time and property to conduct your affair. What did you think would happen? We can work through this. Counseling, therapy. The only counseling I need is with my lawyer. My phone started ringing. Then it rang again, and again. By the end of the day, I'd received 43 calls from Maren, a combination of apologies, threats, and increasingly desperate attempts to negotiate. I let them all go to voicemail. The next day brought 44 more calls. By Sunday evening, the count was up to 87. I listened to exactly none of them. Instead, I spent the weekend methodically documenting everything. I pulled phone records showing the increased communication between Maren and Tyler. I reviewed our business vehicle logs, highlighting the discrepancies between reported mileage and actual usage. I compiled a timeline of Maren's suspicious behavior, cross-referenced with our work schedules. Most importantly, I met with my lawyer. Sarah Mitchell was the kind of attorney who made opposing counsel nervous just by walking into the room. She was thorough, aggressive, and completely unimpressed by sob stories. This is pretty cut and dried, she said, after reviewing my evidence. Adultery, misuse of marital assets, breach of fiduciary duty as a business partner. She doesn't have a leg to stand on. What about her claim to half the business? What claim? She's an employee, not a partner. And now she's an employee who violated company policy and engaged in misconduct that created liability issues. Sarah smiled grimly. She'll be lucky to avoid owing you money. Owing me money? Misuse of company vehicles, conducting personal business on company time, creating a hostile work environment? We could make a case for damages. I liked Sarah's style. Monday morning, I arrived at the office early and changed the locks. When Maren showed up at her usual time, her key didn't work. She knocked, then pounded, then started shouting through the door. I let her make a scene for about 5 minutes before opening up. You changed the locks? She demanded. Security upgrade? Didn't I mention that? This is my office too. Actually, it's not. You're no longer employed here. I handed her a termination letter, effective immediately, for cause. She read the letter, her face cycling through disbelief, anger, and panic. You can't fire me. I'm your wife. Not for much longer. And being married to the boss doesn't exempt you from company policies regarding misconduct. What misconduct? I pulled out my phone and showed her a still frame from the dashboard camera video. This misconduct. Maren stared at the image, her and Tyler in a compromising position in the backseat of her car, and all the color drained from her face. You're going to regret this, she said finally. The only thing I regret is not installing that camera sooner. She left, but not quietly. The whole neighborhood probably heard her screaming about what a bastard I was, how I'd ruined her life, how she'd make me pay for humiliating her. I was counting on it. The thing about small communities is that gossip travels faster than bad news, and bad news travels faster than wildfire. By Tuesday afternoon, half the neighborhood knew that Owen Carter had fired his wife for cheating with his employee. By Wednesday, the other half knew too. Mrs. Henderson, whose Lexus I detailed every month, called to express her support. I always thought that Tyler boy was too smooth for his own good, she said. And Maren, well, I never liked to say anything, but she always seemed a little too friendly with the men. Mr. Patterson from down the street stopped by to shake my hand. Takes guts to stand up for yourself like that. Most men would just take it and pretend nothing happened. Even Vic Torino, who ran a competing detail shop across town, called to offer his condolences. Vic and I had a complicated relationship, half rivalry, half mutual respect. If he was being sympathetic, word had definitely gotten around. Heard about your situation, he said. That's rough, man. You need anything. Extra equipment, someone to cover overflow work. Just let me know. Thanks, Vic. I appreciate it. For what it's worth, you're handling it right. Document everything. Keep it professional. Don't let emotion cloud your judgment. Good advice, but I was already way ahead of him. The divorce proceedings moved faster than Maren expected. Sarah Mitchell filed papers on Tuesday, served them Wednesday, and by Friday, we had a court date scheduled for the following month. Maren's lawyer, a guy named Peterson who specialized in collaborative divorce, was clearly out of his depth. My client feels that Mr. Carter is being unreasonably vindictive, Peterson said during our first mediation session. Your client committed adultery using marital assets, Sarah replied. Mr. Carter is being remarkably restrained. The business was built during the marriage. Mrs. Carter contributed significantly to its success. Mrs. Carter was a paid employee. Her contributions were compensated through salary and benefits. She has no ownership stake. Peterson fumbled through his notes. There's the matter of the family home, which Mr. Carter purchased before the marriage and maintained separately. Mrs. Carter's name isn't on the deed. I watched Maren's face during this exchange. She'd clearly expected to walk away with half of everything I'd worked to build. The reality of her situation was starting to sink in. This is ridiculous, Maren interjected. I helped build that business. I was there every day, managing the books, scheduling clients, while conducting an affair with an employee, Sarah said calmly, which created liability issues and damaged the company's reputation. That's not... We have video evidence, Mrs. Carter. Would you like to review it again? Maren shut up. The mediation ended without resolution, which was exactly what I wanted. Maren's lawyer suggested they needed more time to explore options, which meant they were scrambling to find some angle that might work in their favor. They wouldn't find one, but watching them try was entertaining. That evening, I got a surprise visit from Maren's parents. Robert and Patricia Whitman were the kind of people who believed money could solve any problem, preferably without getting their hands dirty. They'd never approved of their daughter marrying a blue-collar guy like me, and they'd made that clear from day one. Owen, Robert said when I opened the door. We need to talk. About what? This situation with Maren, it's gotten out of hand. I invited them in, curious to see what they had in mind. Patricia looked around my living room like she was cataloging evidence of my inadequacy as a provider. Maren made a mistake, Robert began. A serious mistake. But divorce seems like an extreme reaction. Does it? Marriage is about forgiveness, about working through problems together. Is that what you told Maren when she was screwing my employee in the backseat of her car? Patricia winced. There's no need for crude language. There's no need for polite language when discussing your daughter's adultery. Robert tried a different approach. What would it take to make this go away, financially speaking? You want to buy me off? I want to find a reasonable solution that works for everyone. The reasonable solution is divorce. Maren gets to start fresh with Tyler, assuming he's still interested, and I get to rebuild my business without worrying about employee misconduct. Be practical, Owen. Fighting this in court will cost both of you thousands in legal fees. Why not settle privately? Because your daughter doesn't deserve a settlement. She deserves consequences. Patricia finally spoke up. You're being vindictive. I'm being fair. Maren violated her marriage vows and her employment agreement. She created liability for my business and damaged relationships with clients. She lied to my face for months while conducting an affair with my employee. What part of that deserves a financial reward? She's still your wife, Robert said, not for much longer. They left empty-handed and frustrated, which improved my mood considerably. But they weren't done trying to protect their daughter from the consequences of her choices. The next morning, I found Tyler waiting by my truck when I came out to load equipment for the day's jobs. We need to talk, he said. No, we don't. You're fired, remember? This has gone far enough. You've made your point. Have I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you and Maren are still trying to figure out how to minimize the damage instead of accepting responsibility. Look, I know what we did was wrong. Do you? Because your girlfriend, Amy, doesn't seem to know about it yet. Tyler's face went pale. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? You screwed my wife, cost me a trusted employee, and created a liability nightmare for my business. What exactly do you think you're owed here? Just leave Amy out of this. She didn't do anything wrong. Neither did I, but that didn't stop you from destroying my marriage. I climbed into my truck and started the engine. Tyler stepped back, looking defeated. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. You just haven't figured that out yet. But Tyler was wrong about one thing. It wasn't over. It was just getting started. Judge Patricia Kelsey had a reputation for cutting through bullshit with surgical precision. She'd been handling family court for 15 years and had seen every sob story, every manipulation tactic, and every attempt to game the system, which is exactly why Sarah Mitchell had requested her for our case. This should be straightforward, Sarah told me as we walked into the courthouse. Kelsey doesn't tolerate adultery, and she especially doesn't tolerate people who try to profit from their own misconduct. Maren and her lawyer were already seated at their table, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Peterson had been replaced by someone named Jennifer Walsh. Apparently, Maren's parents had hired more expensive representation. Mr. Carter, Judge Kelsey began after reviewing the preliminary filings, you're seeking dissolution of marriage based on adultery, with no alimony and no division of business assets. That's fairly aggressive. It's appropriate given the circumstances, Your Honor, Sarah replied. Mrs. Carter violated her marriage vows and her employment agreement simultaneously, creating significant liability for the business. Mrs. Walsh, what's your client's position? Your Honor, Mrs. Carter acknowledges that mistakes were made, but she contributed significantly to the success of the business during the marriage. She deserves compensation for her efforts. What kind of compensation did she receive during the marriage? Walsh fumbled through her notes. She worked for the company. Was she paid? Yes, but market rate? I believe so, but the business grew significantly. Due to her efforts or her husband's? I watched Maren squirm as her lawyer struggled to answer. The truth was that I'd built the business through long hours, attention to detail, and word-of-mouth recommendations from satisfied customers. Maren had answered phones and sent invoices. Your Honor, Walsh tried again, there's also the matter of the family home, which Mr. Carter owned before the marriage, Judge Kelsey interrupted. I've reviewed the deed. Mrs. Carter's name was never added. That was an oversight, or a deliberate choice by Mr. Carter to protect his assets. Either way, it's not marital property. Sarah stood up. Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence of Mrs. Carter's misconduct. Proceed. I'd been dreading and anticipating this moment in equal measure. Sarah connected her laptop to the courtroom's display system and pulled up the dashboard camera footage. She'd edited it to remove the most explicit portions, but the context was unmistakable. Maren closed her eyes. Her lawyer looked like she wanted to disappear. This recording was made during business hours, Sarah explained, using a company vehicle in the company parking area. Mrs. Carter was engaged in an extramarital affair with a subordinate employee, creating significant liability exposure for the business. Judge Kelsey watched the footage without expression. When it ended, she turned to Maren. Mrs. Carter, do you dispute the authenticity of this recording? No, Your Honor. Do you dispute that this conduct violated your marriage vows? No, Your Honor. Do you dispute that this conduct was inappropriate for an employee of the business? Maren's lawyer whispered something to her. No, Your Honor. Then explain to me why you believe you're entitled to any portion of the business assets. Silence. Mrs. Walsh? Your Honor, my client was clearly going through a difficult emotional period, during which she chose to commit adultery. That's not a mitigating factor, counselor. That's an aggravating one. The hearing lasted another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. Judge Kelsey granted the divorce, awarded me full ownership of the business and the house, and ordered Maren to pay restitution for the misuse of company vehicles. Mrs. Carter, the judge said as she prepared to adjourn, you made choices that had consequences. Those consequences include the loss of your marriage and your employment. I suggest you learn from this experience and make better choices in the future. Outside the courthouse, Maren was waiting by my truck. Satisfied? She asked. Getting there? You destroyed my life. You destroyed your life. I just documented it. I have nothing left. No job, no money, nowhere to go. You have Tyler, assuming he's still interested now that you can't offer him employment benefits. Maren's face crumpled. He broke up with me last week, said the situation was too complicated. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Tough break. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to conduct your affair in a company vehicle during business hours. You're enjoying this? I'm enjoying justice. There's a difference. She walked away, and I thought that might be the end of it. But Maren had one more card to play, and she was desperate enough to use it. The call came at 3 a.m. Owen, it's Frank. Someone broke into the office. You need to get down here. I threw on clothes and drove to the office, where I found 2 police cars and Frank standing in the parking lot with a flashlight. What happened? Someone smashed the window and trashed the place. Looks like they were looking for something specific. All the file cabinets are open, papers everywhere. I walked inside and surveyed the damage. It wasn't random vandalism. Someone had systematically gone through every file, every drawer, every storage area. My computer was missing, along with the external hard drive where I kept client records. Any idea who might have done this? Officer Martinez asked. I had a very good idea, but no proof. Could be anyone. Competitor, disgruntled former employee, random break-in. We'll dust for prints, see what we can find. I spent the next day cleaning up and assessing the damage. The computer and hard drive were gone, but I had backups of everything important. What bothered me wasn't what was taken, it was what this represented. Maren was escalating. That evening she called. I heard about the break-in, she said. That's terrible. Is it? You think I had something to do with it? Did you? I would never. You've done a lot of things I never thought you'd do. Breaking and entering seems consistent with your recent behavior pattern. I'm trying to rebuild my life, Owen. I don't have time for games. Good, because the games are over. But I was wrong about that too. The games were just changing rules. 3 weeks after the break-in, I was working late at the office when I smelled gasoline. Not the faint odor you might notice near a gas station, but the sharp, overwhelming stench of fuel that's been deliberately spilled. I grabbed a flashlight and checked the perimeter of the building, following the smell to the back corner where we stored equipment. Someone had doused the exterior wall with gasoline, creating a trail that led from the building to a pile of oily rags about 20 feet away. If those rags caught fire, the whole place would go up in minutes. I called 911 first, then Frank, then Sarah Mitchell. While I waited for the police to arrive, I used my phone to take pictures of everything: the gasoline trail, the positioning of the rags, the empty gas can someone had left behind. Officer Martinez arrived within 10 minutes, followed by the fire department and a detective I didn't recognize. This is the second incident at this location, Martinez noted, reviewing his report from the break-in. Someone really doesn't like you, the detective said. Any idea who might want to burn down your business? I had a very good idea, but Tyler was smart enough not to leave fingerprints on a gas can. I've got some theories. Care to share? My ex-wife's been having a hard time accepting the divorce, and her former boyfriend, my former employee, made some threats after I fired him. We'll look into it. But I knew they wouldn't find anything conclusive. Tyler was too careful for that, which meant I needed to be more creative. The next morning, I called Victorino. I need a favor, I told him. Name it. I think someone's going to try to burn down my shop. I want to catch them in the act. You want me to stake out your place? I want you to help me set a trap. Vic was quiet for a moment. That sounds like something the cops should handle. The cops need evidence. I'm going to give them some. What do you have in mind? I explained my plan. Vic listened without interrupting, then whistled softly. That's either brilliant or completely insane. Maybe both. You in? Wouldn't miss it. The trap was simple but effective. I let word slip to Mrs. Henderson, the neighborhood's unofficial information hub, that I'd be out of town for the weekend, attending a trade show in Chicago. I made sure she knew I'd be leaving Friday evening and returning Monday morning. What I didn't mention was that I'd be returning Friday night, after everyone thought I was gone. I parked 3 blocks away and walked back to the office, letting myself in through the rear entrance. Vic was already in position across the street with a camera and a cell phone. We'd tested our communication system earlier. 2 clicks meant someone was approaching. 3 clicks meant call the police. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed twice. I moved to the window and saw a figure in dark clothing approaching the building. Even in the dim light, I recognized Tyler's walk, his build, the way he moved. He was carrying something, a backpack, probably full of accelerant and matches. Tyler circled the building once, checking for signs of activity. Satisfied that the place was empty, he opened his backpack and pulled out a plastic container. He started at the back corner, pouring liquid against the base of the wall, working his way around the perimeter. My phone buzzed 3 times. Vic was calling the police. I waited until Tyler had finished his preparations and was reaching for what looked like a lighter before I turned on the exterior floodlights and stepped outside. Working late, Tyler? He spun around, dropping the lighter. In the harsh glare of the floods, he looked exactly like what he was, a desperate man caught in the act of committing a felony. Owen, I thought you were out of town? I was counting on that. I held up my phone. Smile for the camera. You're going to be famous. Tyler bolted. I'd expected that. What I hadn't expected was how fast he could run when properly motivated. He made it almost to the street before Vic tackled him, bringing him down hard on the asphalt. Stay down, Vic said, pinning Tyler's arms behind his back. "Police are on the way." Tyler struggled for a moment, then went limp. "This is insane. You can't prove anything." "Can't I?" I walked over and showed him my phone screen, which displayed a perfectly clear video of him pouring accelerant around my building. High definition, time-stamped, and automatically uploaded to cloud storage. Even if you smash my phone, the evidence is already preserved. The police arrived within minutes, followed by the fire department and the same detective who'd investigated the attempted arson 3 weeks earlier. "Well, well," Detective Morrison said, looking down at Tyler. "Mr. Brooks, isn't it? We've been wanting to talk to you." They arrested Tyler on charges of attempted arson, criminal trespassing, and destruction of property. As they loaded him into the patrol car, he looked directly at me. "This won't bring her back," he said. "I don't want her back. I want her to face consequences for her choices, just like you're about to." Tyler's arrest made the local news. The story had everything: adultery, revenge, attempted arson, a dramatic late-night capture. The reporter interviewed several of my clients, all of whom expressed support and admiration for how I'd handled the situation. "Owen Carter is a stand-up guy," Mr. Patterson told the camera. "He didn't let them destroy his business or his reputation. He fought back the right way." Mrs. Henderson was even more direct. "That Tyler boy got what he deserved, and frankly, so did Maren. You don't betray someone who's been good to you and expect to get away with it." But the best part came 3 days later, when Maren called. "Tyler's in jail," she said without preamble. "I heard attempted arson carries a pretty serious sentence. You set him up. I protected my business from someone who wanted to burn it down. If that's a setup, then every security camera in the world is a setup. He's going to prison because of you. He's going to prison because he tried to commit arson. His choices, his consequences. I hope you're satisfied." I am. For the first time in months, I'm completely satisfied. Maren hung up, and I never heard from her again. Tyler pled guilty to attempted arson and was sentenced to 3 years in state prison. Maren moved back in with her parents and eventually found work as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm. Our divorce was finalized without further incident. I kept the business, expanded into 2 new service areas, and hired 3 new employees, all of whom underwent thorough background checks and signed detailed employment agreements. 6 months later, I was detailing a client's Mercedes when Mrs. Henderson stopped by to chat. "You know," she said, "I always thought you handled that whole situation perfectly. Very classy, very professional. Thank you. Maren came by last week, you know. Wanted to know if I'd heard how you were doing." "What did you tell her?" Mrs. Henderson smiled. "I told her you were doing just fine. Better than fine, actually. I told her you seemed like a man who'd learned to appreciate the value of loyalty and honesty." "And what did she say to that?" "Nothing. She just got in her car and drove away. But I could tell it bothered her, knowing you'd moved on so completely." I finished buffing the Mercedes to a mirror shine and stepped back to admire my work. Perfect. No streaks, no spots, no flaws. "You know what the best part is, Mrs. Henderson?" "What's that?" "I sleep great at night. Clear conscience, clean business, clean slate." I packed up my equipment and loaded it into the truck. "Turns out the secret to happiness is pretty simple. Surround yourself with people who deserve your trust and get rid of the ones who don't." "That's good advice,"